Hey guys, Britton here with ILIO. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, we're going to be talking about vocal chains, specifically how we can build great sounding vocal chains using just a few of the amazing gem plugins from Overloud. Now, the term vocal chain seems to be increasingly common these days, but what does it actually mean? I see a lot of people who are processing their vocals using a ton of different plugins, and sometimes this can be necessary, but more often than not, in my opinion, a simple vocal chain is much more effective and much easier to take control of to give you great sounding vocals. So today, I'm going to show you how we can build a simple but flexible and versatile vocal chain that can be used on a wide range of vocal styles and mixes to give you great results every time. So let's jump in and get started. So the track we're working with today is a really nice, airy sounding, natural pop thing. The vocal that we've got is quite dynamic. You'll see there's a lot of peaks jumping up and down here. So what we want to do is use this vocal chain to control those peaks, control that dynamic without taking away the sort of natural sound of this vocal. I've got a vocal chain ready to go down here on the left. I've got just a stock channel EQ and then 4 of the gems from Overloud that we're going to use to process this vocal, plus some effect sense down here with just some reverbs and delays, which we'll turn on later on. But first, let's take a listen to this vocal and see what we can do with it.
The light's a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
So a really nice natural sound, like I say, but there are a few issues that we need to deal with. So firstly, I've got this stock channel EQ, and this is just doing some low cut here, just taking away everything below about 100 hertz. It's just cutting away any kind of low end rumble or unnecessary noise that's in there. Then I have this this cut around about 350 hertz, which is just taking away some of that resonance in the vocal.
The light's a little lower, and I'm struggling to see.
The question that comes up a lot of the time is, should you EQ before compression or EQ after compression? And my answer to that is both. The way that I look at it is I like to remove anything that shouldn't be there before we start. So if there's any issues that I'm hearing in the vocal, get rid of them before we actually start kind of adding compression and then adding extra kind of EQ boosts and so on. So generally, the first EQ moves are subtractive. I'm cutting away stuff that doesn't need to be there. Then I'm compressing the vocal, and then I'm going to do some kind of tone shaping and additive EQ, if you like. I don't necessarily like to think about it as purely subtractive and additive EQ. It's more like tone shaping. But the first stage of EQ for me is pretty much always corrective EQ and just kind of tweaking any small issues that may exist within that vocal. At the moment, really the only thing I'm hearing is this resonance here around about 350 hertz. We're just getting rid of some of that. The next thing that I want to do is try and deal with some of these dynamic peaks in the vocal and also kind of give the vocal the feeling that it's a bit closer to the listener. So I'm going to use the Gem Comp 76. I love an 1176 on a vocal. Pretty much every vocal chain that I have always has an 1176 in it, because I think they just sound great. You'll see this one from Overloud is really cool because it gives us different 1176 types. So we have the revision A, which is like an old, the original 1176, which is a lot more colorful, kind of darker sounding. Then we have the revision D, which is the blackface 1176 and probably the most popular 1176. And then we have the revision F, which is a more modern, less colorful sounding 1176, more sort of transparent sound. I really like the sound of this revision A, so we're going to go with that. We have this input section down here, which we can sort of drive some more input in, as well as using the input of the compressor. One of the things to note is that on an 1176, normally the fastest attack is to the right, and the slowest attack is to the left, which is kind of the opposite way to the way that most compressors work. However, what Overloud have done with this one is they've kind of reverted to type of most compressors and gone for the fastest attack being all the way to the left, number 1. So this is going to be the fastest attack setting. Our fastest release setting is in the same place as well. So there's something to bear in mind if you're using this plugin. It doesn't behave in the way that most 1176s do. It behaves in the way that most other compressors do. So my starting point normally for a vocal is to start with the release as fast as it can go, and then the attack, we'll kind of dial that in depending on what we want to do. So I'm going to set the attack sort of around about here somewhere. I'm going to go for a 4:1 ratio, And let's just see what we can do. I'm going to push the input up, bring the output down, and see if we can control some of these peaks.
Trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer. Trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
Let's have a flick between these different 1176 settings and just see what they sound like.
Trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the end.
So to my ears, this revision A, it's kind of warmer in the low mids. It's lacking some of the airiness of the other two. I quite like that because we can add that airiness back in later on. What I want to do is create sort of a nice, thick, warm sound that brings that vocal up front. The revision F is quite bright. It's like there's much more airiness to that one. And then this revision D feels a little bit more kind of mid-forward. But I'm going to go with this revision A. One of the things you'll notice is I'm pushing this quite hard. And the reason for that is because the 1176 in my template, usually in a vocal chain, is in parallel. So I like to kind of push the 1176 hard and then blend it back in with the original signal. And this mix function down here, this parallel mix dry comp section, is going to allow us to blend that back in. So let's play that back with the track and see if we can get it to sit at a point where it doesn't feel over compressed, but it still feels like the vocal was up front, kind of intimate and above the rest of the track.
The light's a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the end. Trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
So that sounds nice. It feels a lot more forward. It feels a lot more upfront. One of the things to note is that, like, when it comes to level matching a compressor, particularly on a vocal which is dynamic like this, if you level match with these quiet parts, then you're going to find that it gets lost in these louder parts. So I tend to like to sort of level match the on and off of the compressor with the louder parts. It's more about kind of creating sort of an average level match rather than being sort of specifically like trying to match the level to certain parts of the vocal, because like I say, it's going to get lost if you're level matching with these quieter parts. So I'm kind of looking at this louder section, turning it on and off and just making sure that like there's not too much of a difference between the kind of compressed vocal and the uncompressed vocal in terms of level in these louder parts. But it's not an exact science. It's difficult to get it exactly right. So if you're thinking, hey, he's not level matched this properly, it's just because, you know, we're trying to sort of create like an average sort of ballpark between the uncompressed and the compressed signal.
We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do.
Cool, that sounds good to me. I feel like we've dealt with a lot of these dynamic issues. The vocal feels like it's kind of pinned in one place a little bit more, but I also feel like we haven't lost too much of that sort of natural sound. It feels like it could still be evened out a little bit though, and that we could maybe sort of just add a bit more smoothness to it, particularly on the sort of longer notes where she's singing and kind of holding those notes. We want to sort of smooth those out a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the Gem Comp LA now. So this is an emulation of the LA2A. I love this plugin. We've got a selection down here where we can choose between an LA2A emulation or an LA3A emulation. In this case, I'm going to go with the LA2A. And what I want to do is just set this at a point where the needle is kind of always moving, but it's not moving too much. I don't want to be squashing it. I just want to make sure that we're kind of using the LA2A to smooth out some of those longer notes and any other parts that are jumping out. And yeah, just kind of set the vocal in place a little bit more.
The light's a little lower, and I'm struggling to see every single problem. Wait, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
That sounds nice. That doesn't sound too overcompressed at the moment. I'm thinking that maybe we could dial back a little bit of this 1176. It feels like it's a little bit spitty at times. I like the aggression that the 1176 brings, but on a kind of more natural vocal like this, we don't want it to be too aggressive or too colourful. So let's just take another listen to that with these plugins on and off and see what difference we've made so far.
We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
And now let's hear that compressed.
We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
It's sounding way smoother now. I feel like maybe we are just over compressing a touch with the LA2A. So I'm just going to add back in some more of that parallel 1176 and bring some of that LA2A down just to see if we can smooth that out a little bit more.
Hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating.
So the thinking behind having plugins like the Gemcomp 76 into the Gemcomp LA is that the Gemcomp 76 is a really fast compressor. It's great for kind of grabbing these peaks, these transients, and bringing them down. But because it's such a quick compressor, it can sound a bit aggressive sometimes, and it's sometimes difficult to set it in a way that you're going to catch those peaks and maintain those sort of longer held notes. So having the Gemcomp LA after that, which is a slower compressor, allows us to use the Gemcomp LA to smooth out those longer notes, those held notes, and kind of using them both to do two different things. And one into the other is like a tried and tested vocal chain. Sounds great. And it gives you a lot of flexibility, particularly with this parallel mix setting, means that we can dial in a certain amount of compression. If we feel like we're over compressing with one, we can bring it back. Or if we feel like, perhaps we want to dial those peaks in a little bit more, bring them down, we can add more in the Gemcomp LA to do that. So it's a really great, versatile set of tools here that we're using to make sure that we're not over compressing the vocal, making sure it still stays natural, but giving us a nice fixed sort of dynamic that we can then automate later on. If we want to bring back in some of that dynamic, just gives us more control over the whole vocal sound. So next up, we have the Gem EQP, which is a really great sounding EQ. What I love about this EQ is that we also have the MEQ model here as well. So the Pultec EQ, the EQP1A, is a great kind of classic EQ that allows us to shape the low end and the top end, to do some cutting and boosting in those areas. And the MEQ, which is included here, is kind of those mid-range frequencies, allows us to shape those in a different way as well. So having both of these in the same plugin gives us a lot more options. We've also got this input stage up here, which allows us to drive the input if we want to add some saturation and some more coloration to it. In this case, I'm not going to be using this input drive because I think, the vocal sounds quite natural. I don't want to add any saturation or anything to it than what we're already doing with that Gemcomp 76. We're going to use these two EQ parts and these filters as well, just to clean up this vocal a touch and make it a bit more airy, make it sit above the track, because at the minute it feels like it's kind of behind. So let's see what we can do with this.
The light's a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to?
So one trick I always like to do on a vocal is just to engage this low frequency attenuation. I really like this visual graphic EQ curve up here. It helps us to kind of see exactly what this EQ is doing. You'll notice that if I set it to 100 hertz, actually that goes kind of all the way up to 1K. So it's not 100 hertz. It's like more like 1 kilohertz. And then 60 kind of starts at 600. So this is kind of what it's doing is it's taking away all of this information down here in a shelf, bringing it down. And I quite like doing it sort of somewhere around 30 to 60, just to clean up some of that sort of low mid resonance and that extra sort of low end tone. You don't need to do much. I'm just taking away a couple here, a couple of dB, and it's making quite a big difference. So let's just listen to that on and off.
The light's a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep...
It's really effective in just helping clean up some of that boxiness and some of those kind of lower resonant frequencies that kind of make the vocal feel a bit stuffy. It gives it a bit more space. I really like the sound of that. Next up, I want to deal with some of these mid-range frequencies. So I was saying earlier about kind of corrective EQ before compression and then additive EQ after compression. That rule isn't always true. You know, in this case, like we've added the EQ in the beginning to take away some of that low mid frequency, and then where we've added that GemComp 76 and the GemComp LA, that compression is bringing some of that mid-range resonance back in, particularly the Comp 76, which is adding some, to my ears, some kind of like lower mid harmonics, making it feel a bit warmer. It means we're going to have to kind of dial some of that back again. So I'm just doing some of that here. I'm also finding that this sort of 2K area now is a bit harsh. There's a bit of harshness in there, which we can dial out with this MEQ, this mid section here.
The light's a little lower, and I'm struggling to see. Still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on.
It's subtle, but it's helping us just remove some of that sort of harshness, particularly when she gets to those louder parts. Just a little bit of attenuation around the 2K area. Lastly, what I want to do is now add a boost. Let's go to sort of 8K, maybe 10K, and see if we can boost some of this top end, just to open that vocal up a little bit more.
The light's a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
Again, you don't need much. I'm just doing a little bump here at 8K with a broad bandwidth, and what that's doing is just allowing the vocal to sit above the track a little bit more, opens up the kind of airiness that's in her vocal, and just makes it sound so much more pleasing to the ear. And like I say, again, you don't need much, it's subtle. So let's hear that on and off and see what difference that's made.
The light's a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be.
It sounds way more natural. Feels like it's just kind of sitting above that track a little bit more. Now we can really pick that vocal out. Feels much more intimate. So let's hear the compression and the EQ on and off and see what difference that's made.
We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
Sounds way more natural to me. Sounds like it fits in the track much better. We've removed some of that kind of unpleasant boxiness which is in that vocal, but we haven't kind of over compressed it or made it sound too unnatural. As I say, there's like a bit of an issue with the level match because some of the parts are louder than others. So kind of, when we turn it on and off, sometimes it feels quieter, sometimes it feels louder, but that's quite natural just because of the nature of the like level matching, like I say, with the compressor in the louder parts and the quieter parts. But generally, I think that sounds really good. So let's hear this now with the effects sends engaged and see if we can kind of get a bit more context for how this is going to fit into the whole mix.
The lights a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something?
It sounds really nice, but I feel like maybe there's just a little bit of an issue with too much shine and some sibilance coming through. And normally the thing to do when you have a sibilant vocal is to reach for a de-esser and try and smooth out some of those S's using a de-esser. But in this case, I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to use the Gem Tapedesk from Overloud, which is one of my favorite tape saturation plugins. And this is also really great for taking away some of that kind of top end shine and sheen that comes in when you start processing things a bit too much. It just adds kind of that natural sort of analog tape flavor, which just helps to roll off some of that sort of super brightness. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to go through the whole kind of ins and outs of this plugin. I've done that in another video, which you can check out on this channel, where I go into the Gem Tapedesk. And also there's a great video from Taylor Danley explaining kind of all the ins and outs of the Gem Tapedesk, which is one of my favorite tape saturation plugins of all time. But basically we have this input section here, which is like a preamp modeling section, and then a console modeling section here. I'm going to turn these off and I'm just going to focus on this tape section and hear what it sounds like with the tape saturation engaged. We've got 30 IPs, 15 IPs, and 7.5 IPs, which is different tape speeds. And each one of those is going to give us a different character. 7.5 IPs is going to give us something darker. 30 IPs is going to give us something that preserves the top end a little bit more. And then 15 IPs is somewhere in the middle. So start at 30 IPs and we'll just see if we can roll off some of that shine that we've added without kind of taking away that nice airiness that the EQP has brought.
The lights a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you. The lights a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
Yeah, that's nice. It just adds like a little bit of finalizing. The tape saturation is adding some compression as well, just another kind of stage of compression. I don't want it to be there to add obvious tape saturation. I don't want it to distort the vocal. It's there really just to kind of smooth off some of that ultra top end, help deal with a little bit of sibilance issue, and just kind of smooth the vocal as a final sort of touch in that vocal chain. Let's just try it with these mic pre and console emulations on as well and just see what difference that makes. We might not need it.
The lights a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't. The lights a little low, struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be.
That sounds really nice to me. I like this S4000 SSL style emulation. I feel like it just helps to sit the whole thing in. The N80 is like a knee style thing, and that feels like it's pushing that mid-range a bit too much. I really like this S4000. That feels to me like a finished kind of vocal. So what we can do quickly now is just automate this vocal, make sure that it's sitting in the right place throughout the whole verse. If anything kind of needs to be brought up or brought down, we can do that. And then, yeah, we're basically done with that vocal. So let's just go through that, add some automation, then we'll take a listen to the A-B.
The lights a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
Nice, that sounds good to me. Using that automation just to bring back in some of that natural dynamic that we've maybe lost with the compression. The purpose of the compression is to give us more control, so that it allows us to do things like automate the parts where we want it to be louder or quieter. If we hadn't compressed it, that vocal would still be jumping up and down. We'd have way less control over it. So the purpose of the compression is to give us more control, and then we can add back in the dynamic that kind of moves with the track using automation. It's just one pass of the automation, so it's not super accurate. I'd probably do a couple of passes of that and get spot on. But for now, that sounds good. I think that vocal sounds pretty much like it's finished. So let's take a listen to what it sounds like with those plugins off and on and see what difference we've made.
The lights a little lower, and I'm struggling to see how every single problem, we never had a problem the way that we used to be. We're still trying to get closer to what hasn't yet been said. Are we holding on to something that we're going to regret? And you keep on repeating that you don't know what to do. You're waiting for the answer, but I can't wait on you.
I think that sounds way better. Like I say, there's a few issues with the level match, obviously, like to repeat myself again, where the vocal's jumping up and down. It's really loud here, it's really quiet here. It's quite difficult to level match it specifically. So you will find that when you turn it on and off, albeit there are parts where it's louder and quieter in certain parts of that verse. But you can hear from the frequency content and from the dynamic content that we've done a great job of just smoothing that out, removing anything that doesn't need to be there, and getting that vocal to sit in the mix way better than it was doing in the first place. The vocal change is so simple. Like I say, 4 of the plugins from Overloud, the Gem Comp 76 to catch the peaks, the Gem Comp LA to smooth that vocal out a bit more, the Gem EQP to do some tone shaping to make it sound like a lot more natural and make it fit in the track a bit more, and then finally just to round that vocal off with the Gem Tapedesk. Obviously at the beginning we've got the stock EQ as well. You can see that vocal chain is so simple. It's just 5 plugins. It can be saved, loaded up in other sessions, in your template, whatever it may be, and used on a whole variety of styles. It doesn't just have to be pop or whatever. This vocal chain would work for me on a whole bunch of different styles, which is what makes it so powerful. The plugins sound great. They're versatile. I can use them again and again. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Leave a comment below and let me know what's in your vocal chain. I'd love to hear what processing you're using to get great sounding vocals. And if you haven't already, go and check out these plugins from Overloud. They sound great. You won't regret it. And I'll see you next time.